Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about FC Dallas in the Moving Forward series episode, and there's no doubt that this was a huge bounce back year for Dallas. I mean, after a disastrous season that we saw in 2021 where they missed the playoffs and finished in 11, one of the lowest plays that they've finished in the standings in franchise history, they made the playoffs again and had a really good season with a record of 14, 11, and 9 and finished with 53 points. They scored 48 goals this season, but they allowed 37 goals this year. And believe it or not, that mark is actually only the best in the Western Conference, but it's only behind the Philadelphia Union as the best defensive record in the league. I mean, I don't think a lot of people noticed that Dallas had a really good back line, but yeah, they had a really good back line as it's shown there, and their goal differential is plus 11. Now they finished third in the Western Conference, but unfortunately, as it is the case for Dallas, even when they have a good season and even when they haven't make it to the playoffs, it's that darn second round that they just cannot able to get past. They once again got eliminated in the second round, and you know, if it wasn't a Cascadia team that gets in the way, now it seems like it's their interstate rival that gets in their way in the second round as they lose to Los Verdes and Austin FC in the second round. Now, in terms of top goal scored, Jesus Ferreira finished with 18 goals, and I believe he finished as the top scoring American in MLS, or actually, I'm not sure if that is actually correct, because I think Brandon Vasquez came pretty close to back. I think Vasquez and Jesus Ferreira is actually tied with 18 goals. So, ignore what I just said, the fact that he was the top American goal scorer. And there was time where he, along with Brandon Vasquez, was competing for the Golden Boot in MLS. Then you got Paul Arriola with 10 goals, followed by Alan Velasco with 6 goals, Franco Jara with 3 goals, and Jadar O'Brien finished with 2 goals. Top assist leader, we got Paul Arriola and Alan Velasco both finished with 7 assists, followed by Jesus Ferreira with 6 assists. Sebastian Lletget finished with 5 assists, and Paxton Pommelko rounds up the top 5 with 5 assists for FC Dallas. Now, in terms of the highlights of this season, well, I think one of the biggest highlights of the season for Dallas is the fact that finally, for the first time of what it seems like forever, they finally got those signings in the offseason right. I mean, that's been really kind of the Achilles heel for Dallas for the past couple of seasons, where, while we know that they have one of the best, if not the best, academy in the league, the biggest issue for Dallas is the fact that they aren't able to be getting some of these talented, or, well, able to go out in the transfer market and get some players that turns out to be a hit and turns out to be talented. Although, again, from what we saw in the last offseason, getting guys like Alan Velasco and Paul Arriola was definitely a change of scene, especially with the amount that they spent to get Paul Arriola. It was a record amount of general allocation money. Though at that time, I had no problem with the fact that Dallas decided to do that. I mean, it just shows you that they have definitely shown a little bit more ambition, and they have definitely spent more money than we've seen before of a team that, you know, despite having a very great academy, this has never been a team that love to open the checkbooks and definitely like to spend big in the offseason until what we saw. And again, those two signings, along with a couple more signings that turns out to be a hit. Paul Arriola looked like he was back to his DC United form that he had in 2018, being a very good player. And then, of course, Alan Velasco, even though he did kind of struggle, especially in the middle part of the season, he definitely turned it up and really looked like could be the future number 10 for this FC Dallas team in the future. And then, of course, Jesus Ferreira was indeed the best like-for-like replacement for Ricardo Pepi's. And I kind of predicted that the fact that, you know, last season when they sold Ricardo Pepi away, I had a feeling Jesus Ferreira was going to be the guy that is going to be the like-to-like replacement, and he definitely have shown some flashes that he can be a great player. Well, this season, it was definitely his breakout season. 18 goals that was scored, really break into the U.S. men's national team, and I expect during, not this offseason, but maybe in the summer transfer window, and also during next offseason, there could be boatloads of offer if Jesus Ferreira can continue the form that he had in the at least for the first half and even the first 2/3 of the season. Now, the other thing that was a highlight is the defense. Again, it was lights out throughout this season, and Martin Paz, maybe the most underrated goalkeeper in this league. Like, you talk about a goalkeeper that I don't think given up recognition, it's got to be Martin Paz, a guy that, again, in a signing that kind of fly under the radar. Not a lot of people know about him and whether if he's going to be good or not. And he turns out to be an absolute hit. I mean, he was a guy that, again, I really think that he's being underappreciated, and not a lot of people talk about how he is definitely considered maybe to be the top 5 goalkeeper, making some big save and also getting a lot of clean sheet in the process. And yeah, again, Dallas really found something in the gym, especially in the goalkeeping department. And that, again, that's just another part of some of the signings that they've done this season, that, it seems like there's a turn of fortune of the fact that instead of signing players that turns out to be a bust and doesn't really work out for them, it's pretty much the opposite in terms of this season. Now, what are some of the lowlights for FC Dallas? And again, there really isn't a lot of lowlights, and again, we're getting to the part of the Moving Forward series episode, especially talking about teams that make the playoffs but got eliminated. I mean, unless if they had some big expectation and they crash out early, then there's definitely some lowlights in terms of it. But, Dallas was a team that coming into this season, not a lot of expectation that was made. I mean, there was expectation that this team should be a playoff team, but not as good as what we thought that they were this season. And that, I think one of the lowlights you would say for this team has to be that summer form. I mean, after starting the season relatively strong, yeah, that summer was brutal for FC Dallas. They went through a stretch of 10 games where they only won 1 game, and that they were slipping down the table, and that, again, a lot of that part of the time when they were really struggling was just simply they can't score. Like, again, the 48 goals that they scored this season, definitely one that I think is just kind of average in terms of a team that is in terms of the goal scoring tally this season. But for a playoff team, that is definitely on the low end, and that, again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that in the summer they were really struggling in terms of that department, and that the good news is eventually they did kind of figure out. And especially, I think one of the other thing I haven't mentioned in the highlights is the fact that they actually finished the season on a hot form. They were one of those teams that, back when I make the prediction of the fact that Dallas can actually go far, I didn't make it just because of the fact that I want a chaotic playoff. Well, maybe in some ways, but I made it mainly because I think Dallas was one of the hottest team coming down the stretch. And how many times we've seen, when you see a team that is red hot coming down the stretch, they can definitely make a deep playoff run. And it definitely seemed like that was on the cards with the way that this team was really playing well down the stretch. But again, that was not the case in the summer. They were definitely having a lot of problem in the summer in terms of winning games and really falling down the table. And then Jesus Ferreira. So as much as I said that he had a great season and he was a like-to-like replacement for Ricardo Pepi, notice how I said during the highlights that it was the first half and 2/3 of the season. Because, yeah, for the last third of the season and even into the playoffs, he was a no-show. And I think this is kind of the reason why there wasn't a big transfer offer that was made from other team to FC Dallas in order to get Jesus Ferreira. And it also doesn't help the fact that he also didn't have a good World Cup with the U.S. men's national team. Yeah, I mean that is something that he's gonna have to try to turn around, and that I know that he had a career year this season and really break out, but when you have these kind of games, when it's crunch time, and especially when playoff time is and the pressure is on you and he's not able to deliver, that is definitely could be an issue for him, and really kind of could be something that other clubs are going to keep an eye on, because they want to get a decent player that can perform under pressure. And unfortunately for Jesus Ferreira, he just haven't been able to show, unlike what we've seen with Ricardo Pepi from last season. And then I think the last lowlights for this team is that they still can't get past the second round. I mean, I know this has kind of been the narrative with this team for some reason. They still aren't able to get past that second round, get back to the conference final that they were in. Of what, actually, it's been a while since they've been in the Western Conference final. I think 2016 was the last year that they were in the Western Conference final, and that a lot of first round or second round exit ever since. And that unfortunately that narrative kind of continue, unable to get past their interstate rival. Though I will say that was a game you maybe will say that they weren't favorites coming into that one, and especially going on the road to play against Austin FC. that was never going to be easy for this FC Dallas team. Now, in terms of MVP and revelation, I mean, it has to be Jesus Ferreira, despite the fact that he really struggled down the stretch. He was a guy that was definitely a great answer for Ricardo Pepi, and then some, because he actually scored more goals than what Ricardo Pepi did last season. Disappointment, I mean, it's got to be Franco Jara. I mean, that shouldn't be a big surprise, as I mentioned in my news of the week a couple of days ago. One of the worst contract in the league, and downright the worst contract that FC Dallas has to carry. But the good news for them is that moving forward in terms of Dallas season, they finally offloaded his contract. He of course was mutually consented, or he was of course he was mutually consented with this team, and he was released just a couple of days ago. So yeah, that of course does open a DP spot, and again, I wonder which is going to be an area that they might need to think about signing another DP. I think it's probably going to be in the midfield, especially in the D-mid area, because we have seen so far that if you want to be a team that could be competitive, you want to have a good number 10, you want to have a good number 9, and ideally maybe a good DP wingers too. But the other area that I think you need to look at is the defensive mid position, because when you look at this Dallas team, I mean, they have a decent number 9 in Jesus Ferreira, they have a decent number 10 in Alan Velasco, they have a good player on the wing in Paul Arriola, but what is missing for them to really get to the next level is that defensive midfield position, and we'll see whether they are going to try to invest in that, especially now that they have a DP spot. And also, we have seen now that more teams have really heavily emphasized that position, and have really even invest designated player money in order to have a good, decent player in that spot. And then I expect, again, some big offer for Jesus Ferreira in the summer and in the next offseason, and that is if he can continue the form that he had last season. I think there's going to be a big money move, and especially with the way that Jesus Ferreira has started to kind of be a regular for the U.S. men's national team, I won't be surprised he's going to get some offer in Europe as soon as the summer transfer window. And then the last thing I think for them is they still need some depth. I think one of the other reasons why they really struggled during the summer month and doing the congested schedule is the fact that they had to rely on playing their starter a lot. You know, when you look at this is a team that doesn't really have a lot of depth, and that I feel like that could be a dangerous thing for a team to have to deal with, because if you have one or two player that goes down with injuries, then next thing you know, things could be a problem. And I think Dallas are kind of fortunate that they were one of the team that didn't really suffer an injury crisis, or actually they not only didn't suffer an injury crisis, they probably was one of the least injured team in the league last season. But yeah, that is something that they need to address. They need some more depth, especially on the attacking end, because as much as I mentioned those good attacking pieces a moment ago, if one of those guys goes down, or any of those guys goes down, they don't really have a decent replacement for them. So that's going to be something that they'll look into. And I mean, in some way, I think they are looking into adding some depth in the defensive area, especially still trying to find a replacement for Matt Hedges that have left the team. But in the attack, I think that is something that they're going to have to figure out. And speaking of Matt Hedges, how will this defense will be affected next season, because he is just been such a leader for that back line for so many years, and that last season was another great example of it. But now losing that leadership in the back line, it'll be very interesting to see whether Dallas can be just as good defensively like they did last season heading into this upcoming season. But speaking of this upcoming season, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're a Dallas fan, what do you think were some of the highlights, the lowlights, the MVP revelation, the disappointment, and moving forward, how is this team going to look heading into this upcoming season? But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.